Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.99 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Please download the app and share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content, not just the front line with Joe and Joe. And if you like what we do, we go live Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time on social media, X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, where we talk more about politics and culture and all that fun stuff. And there's a lot to talk about there. And all of our Veritas interviews are shared there. So if you like what we do, please help us out. Please help us to reach a wider audience. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit a share, and it would be greatly appreciated. So today we're welcoming back to the program a friend of the program, Jacob Imam, and we're going to be discussing the College of Saint Joseph the Worker, and Jacob Imam is the founder. And some of you might remember him from our last conversation. We wanted to have him back to let us know how things are going. Obviously, Catholic education in America is of vital importance. Okay, we can't send our children off to the wolves. Well, Jacob is doing something about it. He's not just talking about it. He's and has done something about it. Some of you may remember him, but I'm just going to give a brief bio. Jacob Imam was born into a Muslim home and converted to Catholicism under the guidance of his godfather, Walter Hooper, who was C.S. Lewis's personal secretary. He graduated from the University of Oxford as a Marshall Scholar with his master's and doctorate, writing his dissertation on theology and economics. As a popular speaker and a writer on politics and economics, he's appeared on Pints with Aquinas, Fox News, and other media outlets. He and his wife, Alice, have 3 young children. And Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, you have another one on the way, right?
Number 4 is coming soon.
God bless you, brother. Jacob Imam, welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe, bro.
It's always great to be with you guys. Thanks.
Absolutely. This will be a great conversation, an important conversation. We just say it. These are important conversations. That's why Joe and I go into the breach as often as we do. Joe Resinello, where do you want to start?
We always begin with a prayer, Jacob, to Our Lady, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin's our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. As Joe Pasillo rightfully said, we had Jacob on, and he introduced the college. The college is St. Joseph the Worker. 2 Joes here, so we're definitely interested. We wanted to bring him on to kind of get an update. He, just had his first class coming in. I did notice, just to throw an aside to all the listeners out there, you're on the provisional list for the Newman colleges, recommended colleges. That's a good sign. I mean, first year, you're already on your way. That's good advertisement. But before we get into it, just to give us a short summary, what is the college all about, Jacob?
The college stands to reclaim higher education as it ought to be done. We believe that our students that not every student should be going off to college. We believe that college should be reworked for those who ought to be going there. And we're an institution that seeks to reform the business model of higher education so as to be able to provide better education, more stable education, and a better platform for our students to go off and to live and work. So we combine an extremely rigorous and elite bachelor's degree in Catholic studies together with training in the skilled trades like carpentry, HVAC, electrical, plumbing. And through our 4-year bachelor's degree, they graduate not only with their undergraduate degree, but also with their journeyman's card in a skilled trade. And because you get paid to train in a skilled trade, our students graduate without any debt at all, with a good career path going forward and with a real conduit by which they can instantiate in the world the truths that they've learned in the ivory tower, so they don't just get locked up there forever.
No, absolutely, Jacob. Talk about that for a second. The need in America to emphasize bring back the trades. Bring back, I'll tell you straight up, we don't know if our son is going to go to college. Mm-hmm. And all parents have to be realistic. Now, I grew up, just to give you a quick background, Jacob, where, excuse me, It was, baby boomer, Italian Catholic. You got to go to school or else you're a failure. Okay. You have to go to college or else what are you going to do with your life? In the meantime, I'll show you the debt. You mentioned the debt that my wife is paying, has college loan debt. That's a whole other story. But this idea that you have to go and get a bachelor's degree. What about trades? The most success. I work in a high-end restaurant here in Arizona, okay? The people that are the richest that come in there, if you want to just keep it in terms of the money that you can make, they're all tradespeople. They are plumbers, they're contractors, they're electricians. The electrician that we use at the restaurant makes more money than I don't know who. And again, I know that's a little bit of a rant, but bringing back trades and teaching people skills. I mean, let's remember that at the end of the day, that's how the greatest cathedrals in the world, the greatest architecture in the
Right.
world was built because of tradespeople. You know where I'm going, Jacob. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Absolutely. I think, look, when you look back at the pre-Christian world, the pagans hated work. They hated manual labor in particular. They saw it as being lesser, as just a means to an end. You don't want to be the one that's building the house. You want to be the one that's using the house, right? You don't want to be the one that's building the corner office. You want to be the one that's sitting in the corner office, right? I mean, that's the mentality of the ancient world. Doesn't that sound exactly what our mentality is today? And I think it's for the same reason, right? Is that in the pre-Christian world, there wasn't the revelation of Jesus Christ, the carpenter, God, the carpenter, where he unveils to us that the real mode of humanity as it ought to be, the way that we actually should live as men and women, is in the mode of self-giving. That you need to build up yourself, build up your skills, build up your body so it is of greater service to your neighbor. The pagans saw that as servile. The Christians saw that as the fulfillment of human nature. As we have moved from a Christian society to a post-Christian society, we end up having more of the mentality of a pre-Christian society. And so we have derided and degraded the manual arts precisely because we do not understand A, the service that they provide to others, B, the importance of work for our societies, and C, the importance of work for building our own character. We're all obsessed with get rich quick schemes of trying to sweat as little as possible and to be able to have minimum inputs, maximum outputs, instead of saying, no, what is it that we are actually trying to do with our lives? What are we trying to build up? Whom are we supposed to become? When Christianity took over and revolutionized the world, they didn't see the manual arts as something that you sent the slaves into. They saw it as something that you send your brightest and best into, and that's why we still travel to Europe to behold these extraordinary buildings, these monuments to God that men created. Why? Because we were sending our most brilliant minds. We can't build like that anymore. It's not only that we don't have the means to, we don't have the capacity, the mental capacity to. We have forgotten how to build as well as we once did. That is just one testament to this larger problem that we're seeing today. Now, I think there's also the consideration you just said, like the trades provide a financially stable path for people today. That's good. I hesitate to say that should be our focus, because then you're just choosing the trades like you would choose any other job, right? You've just rendered the blue collar jobs just like any white collar jobs. And I think that we need to have more of a vocational mindset, saying, no, looking around at the landscape of the world, what are all the problems? What do I have the capacity to help fill? Like, what are the problems that I can help accomplish? That might be in the trades, it might not be for you. The trades have been a historically proven Christian preferred choice as a sure way of helping to sanctify the social order.
No, absolutely, Jacob Imam. And if you're just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, a friend of the show, we're proud to say a friend of the show, Jacob Imam is here. We're discussing the College of St. Joseph the Worker. I just want to have one quick comment, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe. One of the problems, you call it post-Christian or pre-Christian, Joe and I call it neo-pagan. It's
Yeah,
all the
great. Same thing. Yeah.
But a quick comment, when those stonemasons and carpenters and all those people that built the greatest architecture the world has ever seen, okay, are Catholic cathedrals, hands down. I don't care what any atheist or secularist says. That's the greatest architecture, okay. Hollywood, they celebrate the anti-beautiful because there's a movie that's probably going to be nominated for Academy Awards, all right, because it seems very avant-garde, called The Brutalist. And brutalism is the opposite of what we're talking about. You build things not for beauty, you build things for usefulness. It's very utilitarian. You know what I mean? So we live in a culture that not only doesn't place any importance on what we're talking about, they denigrate it by saying that ugly project in Newark that was built 60 years ago with a brutalist style is somehow just as beautiful as Sacred Heart Cathedral, which is right up the block. And obviously we know that ain't true. But, it's funny the way our culture, they celebrate things like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. Look, brutalism is patricide. The modernist architectural program looked back at what our fathers did and said, we don't want to have anything to do with that. Look, real creativity, we think about creativity as something that's like innate, that you're born with it. Some people are creatives, and others aren't. That's just a big lie. Creativity is a byproduct of training. Creativity only comes about through endless repetition and mastering what other people have already figured out. That's where creativity comes from. Think about Einstein. I mean, he didn't come up with these unbelievable mathematical equations just because he was thinking outside the box. No. He figured out every single thing that was in the box before he was able to peer above it. It was only because he mastered everything else that people had done that he was able to provide something new to the world. People think of Einstein as like his hair was just as creative as his math formulas, as if that was just like that creativity was just like spilling out of his pores. I mean, that's insane. That is an insane belief that no one should believe, that creativity comes through repetition, through drudgery, through the toil of figuring out how things work, so that you might understand truly the nooks and crannies of reality to be able to then peer over and see something new, right? That's exactly the thing that the brutalists failed to do. They said, I don't care about what my fathers figured out. I don't care about what our society has figured out. I want to do something new. That's patricide. That is so perfectly antithetical to the way of Saint Joseph, who is our true father in the faith, in the trades, the foster father of the Word incarnate. He is our model, and so docility and deference, most perfectly displayed by his wife, the Blessed Virgin Mary, is the mode that we all should take, inclusive of us builders. So that's a first mistake. Now, second of all, most people talk about, second point I want to make with brutalism is that people think it was just high efficiency, is that aesthetics doesn't matter. It's no problem. I went to Baylor University for my undergrad, and they did something pretty cool there. They put steeples on parking garages. They made the parking garages beautiful brick. I mean, it was outstanding to look and you think, man, is that a church? Is that a chapel? No, it's a parking garage. Okay, well that's cool that they did that, and I'm so grateful that they did, so that no matter where you're looking on campus, you're looking at something gorgeous.
That's Texas, Jacob. We don't do that in New Jersey.
Yeah,
New Jersey's brutal.
But there's a problem still with that, where they're trying to react against brutalism, but what they've done is just put a different facade on the same structure. That's not a solution. Look at, say, in contrast, Professor Philip Bess at the University of Notre Dame. He was the chair of their architecture program. And look him up. He has proven that parking garages are inefficient modes of parking. That we think about as like, well, we just try and fit everything, all the cars in one place. We can pack more cars in there. We'll be able to get more people, settled and on their way, ready to walk after that. And what he has demonstrated is that parking garages are actually inefficient, that you can fit in more parking if you have a more strategic development that does not include one central place for parking. Because you think about this is like the gap between cars, the space it takes to pull out, the inroads, the outroads. That's a ton of extra space that's required. Okay, so what is Professor Bess proven or identified for us? That brutalism is not only ugly, it's inefficient. So it does not even fulfill what it's promising. It's not actually utilitarian. It is profoundly unproductive. Okay, third thing. Last thing I'll say about this brutalism stuff. At the rise of brutalism, you saw another architect headed the architecture program, now not at Notre Dame, but at Berkeley, a guy named Christopher Alexander, who's looking around the world and saying, what are we doing? Why are we building this way? And he went on a major search. He went on a search around the world to look at the cities, the neighborhoods, the houses, down to the individual rooms that people had historically not left. Everywhere from Switzerland to Japan, he was looking around. And of course, while the architectural design of those different cultures were profoundly different, what he was trying to identify was the similarities of categories. Like, what were the various patterns, as he called them, that all these cultures seem to grasp onto. And he then began to collate 256 of these different patterns. Doesn't matter where you look in the world, people who have built and preserved these houses have held on to through time. So the pattern language is his book. And I think when we're talking about brutalism, we have to also be thinking, well, what's a way out of brutalism? So there you find, I would say, is something that's very necessary. And I find in the pattern language of Christopher Alexander a real path forward. I find in the work of Professor Philip Bess a real path forward, that we do not have to fall into the lies that beauty and utility are at odds with one another, but rather that beauty and goodness are hand in glove, one and the same, and that we need to stop believing in these stupid lies that inefficiency is beautiful and that the ugly is efficient.
No, I hear you. Jacob Imam joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Quick comment, though. Everything that you just described in the last several minutes requires humility. And understand what you were talking about. There are those who thought about these things at a lot higher level than you did way before you were even born. And you need to humble yourself and understand that. Just like St. Joseph, his greatest lesson is his humility.
Yes.
And you founded the College of St. Joseph the Worker. Funny enough, I just last week, it's funny that I forgot and I didn't look at the calendar, and I forgot that we were interviewing you today. But I did finish I was inspired to pray a novena to St. Joseph the Worker. And me and my family, we prayed for 9 days, and and I know it's efficacious. I can't tell you how, but I know it's efficacious. Hopefully because I need a little humility. Joe Resinello.
Jacob, you mentioned trends and you mentioned innovation. I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because I think this college is definitely something that's at the forefront of something to come. I have 5 kids, you're going to have 4, and the cost of college, as we know, is off the charts. And here's the thing. This is the difference. Full disclosure, I graduated college, a Catholic college, in 1992. If you had, say, a B average, a 3.0, and say you studied something like SAFE, like accounting, you were locked into the upper middle class. You're getting a job. You're getting a good job, and you're going to do well. In just about any city in America, that has changed. How do I know? Well, I work in the world. I work in corporate America, and that kid can no longer get jobs in the big cities, New York, Chicago, LA. You have to go to a secondary city, say like, I don't know. I'm not knocking other cities, but you're not going to the big cities.
Totally.
Those jobs are reserved for elites, people who go to Harvard, people go to Columbia. It's changed. AI is coming. That is going to put a lot of people out of work. Why am I bringing all this up? I think you are at the forefront of something different that parents have to think about. Because I'm just going to speak for me. I have 5 kids. I want to guide them into professions that are not going away. You have to think in these terms, from practical to listen. We got to we got to make a living. We got to make a living, and ultimately, what you're doing is guiding people into a career. It's not going away. Plumbing is not going away. Being an electrician is not going away, nor is like other trades, masonry, various carpentry. That's not going away. And there are a lot of jobs that are, and that's reality. Talk about that, because I think that's your selling point. People have to think differently, and you're doing that.
You know what? You're exactly right. I mean, what AI is forcing us to come to realize is what is most fundamental about being human, right? If something that we've designed after our own minds is coming up on the horizon, then we're having to look ourselves in the mirror and say, how am I different from this? What is my capacity that is not seen in this thing? And I think there's many different answers to that. That are worth exploring and so much fun to do so. I'll kind of drop a couple of jelly beans there before actually getting into what I want to mention is that it can't be prudent, right? It can't make a decision based upon real wisdom. It doesn't have the capacity to do so. It actually doesn't have the capacity of being really creative, right? It can collate past ideas, but what did we just say about Einstein and such? Once we collate ideas, we can look further. AI cannot do that. It will never have the capacity to do that. It will be able to collate more things than anybody could ever imagine, and that is its power. But it cannot push forward, especially in the mode of prudence. But of course, it also says that, the further that I get away from the screen, the more that I retain my own personal capacity, that I cannot be overcome by AI, who is very good at collating things, right? So the further you step away from the computer, the more power and security you actually have, that something else is not going to replace you. Now, add all those things up. If you are in a situation that requires prudence, creativity, and is apart from the computer, then you are in a pretty safe situation there, right? What's the tradesman do? He has to walk into a situation and be able to troubleshoot and to be able to figure out a problem. Okay, that's quite a creative situation. This is why Elon Musk talks about the trades as being one of the last things that's going to be automated. That's a pretty powerful source there to be citing, I would say. So it's a creative, but you're also doing it for somebody. What are they able to afford? How do you make that work? Can we get creative with the financing so that we take the most proper steps forward for making a prudential decision for the client and their family? Okay, so now we're here on prudence and creativity, but of course you're as far away of a computer as you can possibly get. My laptop does not crawl underneath the house to wire up the new appliances. It doesn't run PEX. It can't sweat copper, right? And so if you look at just prudence, creativity, departure from the abstracted life of the screen, what are you looking at? You're looking at the tradesman. So I would say that absolutely there's security there, but there's a real gift to society there as well.
I think what you're doing, Jacob, is when you have I'll make a statement, and I love a comment before we go to break. What the importance of what you're doing, and by extension, what Joe and I are doing, and many others in shedding light on what it is you're doing, and others, is that we're combating the narrative, and unfortunately, See, what you're talking about is the inherent dignity not only of the human person, but also of that human person's work. Okay? God gives us that dignity of our labor. The Catholic Church in its social teaching, going back to Rerum Novarum, talks about this. Okay? Leo the 13th, Pius, I believe, the 11th, and Pope St. John Paul II talk about the dignity of work in major encyclicals on Catholic social teaching. We live in a world where Yuval Harari is out there talking about the uselessness of human beings in the future. Bill Gates is saying most human beings aren't going to have anything to do. Pause, Mr. Gates. I know you're worth a whole lot more money than me, but you're not smarter than me, okay? We are going to resist you. We will resist you tooth and nail because we will not get to the point. We're going to fight against getting to the point where the human labor is done away with somehow. And then by extension, according to these people, then the human person can be done away with. And that's not conspiracy theory. That's some of their stated goals. I'd love a quick comment on that for a minute, Jacob, before we go to the break.
No, I think it's exactly what you said, is that more people have to be saying that we don't want this. Right. I mean, this is funny when you talk about AI. It's like, who wants AI? It's like nobody wants AI, and yet it's coming anyways. We all say is like, this is scary. This is undermining our humanity. It's taking away the things from us that make it most human, right? Where we can rely on collation instead of our own thinking. We can rely on their answers before our own creative capacity. That is not only leaving us with a worse result, but it's also a worse result that we feel as if is inevitable. And yet, I think the strongest way in which we push back against it is actually just saying we don't want it. And of course, then not incorporating it into our life as much as possible. But talking about it is so important. And so I commend you tremendously for that, and I thank you so much for it as well. We need to get back, but in order to say we don't want it, not only that's a negative statement, right? We also have to have the positive statement. What do we want instead? And that's the key, and that's what we have to be screaming from the rooftops, even louder than anything else.
And that's why we're so appreciative of what you're doing, is because that's right. We just don't want to fight against this worldview, whatever you want to call it. We are offering, again, nothing new. We're offering the Catholic vision of history, the Catholic vision of human flourishing. Okay, and human flourishing does not entail getting rid of billions of people and the work that they do simply to serve you. Again, getting back to what you spoke about earlier, about being in a pre-Christian society. Well, the Romans tried that, okay? Didn't end too well for them. So anyway, Jacob Imam is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're way in the breach, as we always are when Jacob comes on. Jacob is the founder of the College of St. Joseph the Worker. We would encourage you, Jacob, real quick, where could parents with college-age children do some more research on your school?
Come to our website, collegeofstjoseph.com. Matt Frad kindly is endorsing us and saying some nice things on his channel right now, so you can take a look over there as well. But I would say the biggest thing: come over to Steubenville, Ohio. Let us show you around campus in person. It's growing by the day, and we're having a lot of fun taking the befores and producing an after. It's worthwhile coming to see.
All right. Well, listen, Joe and I will come to Steubenville. We'll come and see you. Tell Matt Frad we'll come down and sit down and have a pint with Aquinas anytime he wants to, okay? So you're with us at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. Jacob Imam's with us. Very important conversation. Please, if you're watching this on social media, like, subscribe, share. I can't emphasize that enough. We'll be right back.
You guys are awesome. This is fun.
Thanks, Jacob. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're way in the breach with Jacob Imam. We are proud to say a friend of the show. And we are discussing his school. He founded the school, College of St. Joseph the Worker. And like I said before the end of the first segment, please share this video, especially if you have college-age children. Joe's got 4 kids that are not ready for college yet, and about 3 years, my kid will be ready for college, and I think I'm going to be filling out an application. Whether he gets accepted or not, that's another story. Maybe I have a little bit of an in because I know the founder, all right? But we'll see. But this is so important, and we're so grateful for this conversation. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to start?
Tell us about the first class, Jacob. I mean, you cut your teeth You got it moving. Tell us what you learned. Tell us about the first class. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. So we have this very enviable group of students, 30, that we accepted in the first class. We had applications open and marketed for a total of 2 months. We had 130 people apply. We were able to be quite picky, and they are just phenomenal. The average standardized test score, which is not a perfect metric by any means, but it's not a bad one either. They clocked in at the 90th percentile. I mean, these are bright kids that want to have their minds formed by the Catholic intellectual tradition before they then go off and to lead the life of a craftsman. These are quite contrarian kids as well, and we're seeing that. This first year, they're in the classroom studying sacred scripture, sacred tradition, and rhetoric, but they're also in the workshop, going through the entire anatomy of a home, everything from site planning to finish work, so that they understand every single part of a build from start to finish. They'll have a lecture in the morning, talk about elements of roofing, and then they move over and they actually are building a small home through the course of the year. So they get their lecture on roofing, then they build a roof. So it's a pretty cool process, pretty cool thing. I think, within this first year, what do we find is that, to be perfectly frank, there's not a lot of good trades curricula out there, and that we really had to double down on producing our own, and so that's what we've done. More work to do there, no doubt. Another thing, kind of looking into the future, is that this is a great build and great experience for the students doing this small build. We'd love to. It's going so well that we want to do it for real. So next year, the house that they will be building is not something that will be taken apart and after it was built inside. We're going to build it on a real job site, and we're going to sell it. Or really, what we're doing is building it in conjunction with local entities around here to help provide transitional housing and elderly housing in our beloved Ohio Valley. So that's a pretty big shift from this year to next, in keeping with what we're doing, but very exciting to see the next step. What else is happening? We see that the life of home ownership is definitely something that is essential to growing up and being a provider for your family. And so we've placed our students in houses around the downtown, all in proximity to our workshop, to our classrooms, as well, and that is actually probably going a little bit better than I had imagined. I thought there were going to be more problems, but rather calling our students up instead of just using this bed, but actually claiming responsibility over this house. They're really stepping up to the plate, and I'm pretty proud of them, to be honest. Things that we're preparing this year, I think, a large one problem that we've had is that people have thought of us principally as a trade school. Well, we're bucking the trade school model just as much as we're bucking higher education as a model. Trade schools, great, but they are hyper concentrated and focused on just one trade. That leads to things like HVAC techs cutting through floor joists to get their ductwork in, or them not understanding real load capacities, and therefore compromising the integrity of a building. We got to get around that, and so we've developed this anatomy of a home curriculum instead. But we also needed to double down on higher education and understanding, helping people understand. No. We are not here just to attaching a BA because mom likes it. We're attaching a BA because we think that there is real truth and depth in the contemplative life that begins to transform the soul, enabling one to be able to go off and lead a better active life and to be a leader in society instead of just being a follower. And so we take this extremely seriously. It's exceedingly rigorous. And so we're building a academic, or rather taking a old federal courthouse, beautiful old federal courthouse, and doing significant renovations to get that ready for this next year. Floor ceiling, wall paneling, coffered ceilings, making really appreciating the fact that the truths that we're teaching our students are beautiful, and therefore the space in which they're learning ought to be beautiful too. So I'm really excited to present that to our next class and the classes to come.
No, absolutely, Jacob. Jacob, let me ask you a question. I am of the view, okay, and I'm sure you guys are too. If you are well versed in all of Catholic teaching, okay, not just the morality, but all the layers of it, as Joe likes
Yeah.
to say all the time, read the Catechism, okay, understand the faith. You are equipped if you're trained mentally, okay, intellectually. If you're trained in what the Catholic Church teaches, you are trained to comment on politics, on
Yeah.
economics, on we're talking about labor, all sorts of things, okay? All the questions that people out there ask. You are prepared to have the proper worldview when it comes to dealing with these things, okay? And at your school, you're learning a trade. And where am I going with this? Talk about the professors that are doing the religious training for your students.
Yeah,
What kind
yeah.
of
No,
professors are they?
yeah, it's a real deal. So we have this understanding of that developed and was articulated extremely well during the Middle Ages, that good education should include the liberal arts, which are the most speculative ideas about nature of God and of reality, what being actually is. That's when we were talking about theology and metaphysics there. That it should include the practical arts, which were considered to be politics and economics, still theoretical in some capacity, but really about the temporal world. And then they should also include the manual arts as well. And that's actually being able to instantiate all these theoretical ideas into the world by transforming the world and elevating it up into something higher and better. So, from our span, we have professors that include all of these things. We have professors such as Dr. Jared Goff, who is, in my opinion, the greatest speculative theologian in the Anglophone world today. Dr. Goff is, we've just nailed him down. He arrives this summer to begin teaching this fall. I'm absolutely delighted about that. So there we go for the liberal arts. We have in the practical arts probably who has actually been considered not just by me, but has been spoken widely, even across the pond in dear old jolly England, as being the greatest political theologian. So there we have the practical arts. Dr. Andrew Willard Jones, who is the august author of books like Before Church and State and The Church Against the State. Both of which I would recommend highly.
Yeah, he's been on our show. He's our people.
Oh, good, good,
my
good.
people.
I'm glad to hear he came on. That's great. Yeah, he's totally our people. And then of course we have over in the manual arts, we have instructors there in the trades that have also received their education in the practical and liberal arts as well. I mean, just look at our president, Mike Sullivan, for instance, who ran Emmaus Publishing for a decade or so, while having his plumber's license and is a GC and a very, very accomplished one at that. So we see the integration of the head and the hands as being primary to being fully formed as humans. That's our goal for our students. That's our goal for ourselves as well. My intellectual, my academic cred isn't too bad either, I suppose. But of course, I see that it's essential that I round it out, and that we come to know the world, to be able to even speculate about it by engaging with it as well. I mean, this is the glory of why God made our hands the way that He did. That they made them, that it's soft, that we can that they're meant for, that our hands are built for the intellectual life, that we might go out and manipulate the world, but be able, that they're soft, they're subtle, so that we can receive more information from the world through them. Monkeys' hands, as cool as their opposable thumbs are, are not soft. They're not receptive.
Hey Jacob, I love a comment on this. You know
Yeah.
what it brings to mind is that people need to stop worrying about whether or not the world was created in 7 literal days or the earth is 6,000 years old, and read Genesis and the creation narrative in light of what you're saying, and you find it's much deeper and richer than having these arguments that at the end of the day don't really matter. When you talk about the gifts, which that's why I'm bringing this up, the
Yeah.
gifts that God gives us. He tells Adam to name the animals. Adam
Yeah.
is the first scientist, okay?
Yes.
He's naming the animals. He says, after the fall, you will work through this, or you will eat through the sweat of your brow. He dignifies our work, okay?
Yeah,
Those-
he
we
gives
should-
us the
we
gift of
should
work even
read.
before the fall. He says, till and keep. He says, subdue and have dominion. Those are working terms.
Right.
That's a gift not just after the fall. That's something before it as well, which is something to be considered. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
Joe,
look, I
interrupted.
like to have a good argument with, with others out there who are not Catholic. But at the end of the day, if I'm reading the Book of Genesis, this is what I'm trying to draw from it, about what exactly it is that God gave us to do when He created us. Because obviously, our lives, our very lives, are a gift from Him, and then He gives us all these other gifts. And I think sometimes people get caught up in the literalism of Genesis. And I'm not saying whether it's literal or not. I'm just saying I don't care because I'm trying to look for something much deeper there. You know what I'm saying, Jacob?
I absolutely, I think so. Let's consider Genesis for a second. I just brought up for a moment that work was given prior to the fall rather than after it. Okay, there is no ancient Near Eastern narrative that says that. What Genesis is doing is coming up as a polemic against all of these ancient Near Eastern origins myths, in which you find not only men working and carrying drudgery, but the gods themselves, in great contrast to God, who merely spoke and it was. Right? Okay, so what was the point of the gods working? Well, they needed food. The Atrahasis, one of the greatest and most well-known origins myths of the ancient world, records the gods digging the trenches for the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. What does Genesis do? Well, God just made them and they were there, right? God didn't need water.
God just said, put a river over there.
That's what He said. But it's amazing that both texts include specifically mentioning the Tigris and the Euphrates. Okay, then what does God do? He places us in the garden and He says, eat of any of the fruit of these trees. That work, this is very important, that work was detached from accumulating the necessities of life. We were not working to eat. God had already given us food. So then what's the point of work? Those are the questions that Genesis are begging us to ask. What is the point of work if it's not for necessity? What happens after the fall is that it becomes one. But that doesn't still get us away from then understanding what work was for as the principal purpose of work. What is the primary purpose of work if it's not food, right? Those are the questions that Genesis is begging us to ask. What does it mean also when Adam is naming the animals? What is that supposed to mean? Why is that important? Why can't he just call a lion and a zebra a zebra? What's the point of that? Why is that at all interesting? That seems very boring to me. So why does he command him to name the animals? These are the principal things that give us not only a contrast to the other ancient pagan myths, but it gives us a profound vision of what humanity is. I don't know if we have time or of interest to answer either of those questions, but I'm just saying this only in total agreement with you, Joe, that we need to be looking and penetrating into not just the text of Genesis, but the meaning behind it.
And that was obviously my larger point, because anybody reads Genesis or Scripture in general, you're obviously applying it to yourself and understanding, your relationship with God, Father,
Yes.
Son, and Holy Spirit. So Jacob Imam is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're weighing the breach. Jacob is the founder of the College of St. Joseph, the Worker. That's what we were discussing, and I guess a few other things too. Joe Resinello, where do you want to go?
I want to talk about something you said the last time you were on the show, because to be honest with you, I've thought about it considerably. In the model, the current model, most times the man goes out and works and the
Mm,
mom stays home. um, in the ideal, sadly, because of economics, that doesn't always work out. Full disclosure, my wife, we're in the laptop class, so my wife can work from home, but
mm,
not everyone could do that,
mhm,
sadly. So here you go. You said, and I thought about this, there was a time where families worked together. A father worked with his family
mhm,
on site, like when we had like an agrarian society, or even in the trades, families worked together. That's gone. I mean,
mm.
like, even if you're fortunate enough, again, that you have a really high paying job, the man is out of the house 14 hours a day. I
Yeah.
mean, this is real. This is real life, and many men do that in cities around America. And you said that's not the ideal. The ideal is for a family to work together. Why do I bring this up? Because work is going to change in America. If you get a lot of things out of this conversation, because a lot of good things have been said, but let that be driven home. I'm telling you this right now. In 20 years, America is going to be a very different place when it comes to work. And I think you're at the forefront of that, where a family can work together. You form each other because men have to think about forming their family.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, society's going to. Talk about that, because I think you're on to something. It really made me think, and I'm still thinking about it. It's something I hope for my sons.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Look, if you're spending the brightest and best hours of the day away from your family, then there's something disordered about that. And I say this kind of as a Catholic in a confessional sort of moment. I got back. I had a work trip yesterday. I got back about 1:45 in the morning. My first meeting this morning was at 7:30. I'm not seeing my kids nearly as much as I ought. So this is certainly self-directed criticism. Um, but I think I hope it's taken not as a sign of complaint, but of self conviction that I'm saying this is that I need to be like that there is something disordered about our work schedule, that we are away from, and husbands and fathers are so disconnected from the principal formation of kids during, again, those brightest and best hours of the day. Traditionally, there's not an understanding of childhood, right? There's words for infants and for babies, and for men, but like childhood's kind of a made up concept. We talk about today a lot, that adolescence is a made up concept, where you are physically an adult, but spiritually, maturity wise, still a kid. Well, that's true. I'm not disagreeing with that. That's absolutely true. But childhood is also a made up concept, just like adolescence is. And that what you find from birth until death, well, birth until into the kind of the climax of adult life, I would say, that you're just slowly growing in capability. And that is there's not a moment in which you just go to new a new vector. The vector's always going forward, or should be, and where you're becoming more and more capable and competent as life progresses, and that we should be able to incorporate our sons and our daughters in our work as much as we can. I mean, even to the point of, you're looking at the Middle Ages, when 5, 6, 7 years old, kids are coming to the workshop with dad, or kids are coming to the fields with dad, right? And it's like they're not that helpful, right? We do live on some land, and so this was a very determined decision that my wife and I made, and sacrifices that we made to be able to get off to land. Why? Because I was trying to find more room in my life to welcome my kids into real necessities, right? So he did kind of crazy things, and this is not I'm not telling people to do this. I'm just saying ways in which my family has tried to think about this is that we only heat by a wood stove. Like that's the extent of our heating in a house. Okay, well, what does that mean? Is that we have to go chop down trees, that we need to go buck logs, that we then have to go split them. That is something that I actually get to welcome my kids into. Like they don't really make me more efficient, but it is necessary work that we actually have to get done that I can give them a role in. And so they get to begin to participate in my life and in my work and contribute in a real way to the family, not something that's just like fun or like paper mache, art for the kitchen that really isn't that beautiful and you will throw it away at some point, but rather that it is something that really is a requirement, right? That's something that, that we're trying to work that out. Like we're thinking about this. And of course, I hope you understand this, that I see a problem. I'm trying to come up with a solution. I don't know what that is. I'm doing this, I hope, in humility. And this is a way in which I think we can get back to the more and more that we engage in work that we can welcome our kids into. Obviously, child labor laws came about for a real reason, right? That kids were being placed in a position of a cruelty, where they were forced to be, they were chosen specifically to be workers in industrial manufacturing plants because they were most docile and because they would argue less. That was the reason why kids were brought in. That is obviously dehumanizing. It's cruel. It's evil. But what is also cruel and evil is to never give kids a chance to begin to participate in the life with dad.
No, absolutely, Jacob. That's one of the things. I mean, I remember when I was a kid. I mean, Joe's father was a barber. I'm sure Joe sat in that barber shop and watched his father ply his trade. I'm sure he did without knowing it. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. And you want to see what your father's doing. I used to sit there watch my father shave. You know what I mean? Because I want to see what my father's doing. My father, God rest his soul, he had his regular job. I couldn't really go to his regular job too much because he was a teamster, right? But he would do side things to try to make a little extra money. He always bought me and my brother. In other words, whatever he was trying to do. And we worked. He might be arrested nowadays for a 7 or 8 year old couple of kids that he would say, here, you pick that up and bring it over there, or whatever the case might be. You get arrested nowadays. That's my little comment. But I do want to say this, or ask you this, because we're winding down a little bit. There's a lot of talk. I'm not going to get into politics. There's a lot of talk about defunding higher education. They take our money. They don't really, sorry. My brother's a Yale graduate. My brother will say if he had a son, he wouldn't send him to Yale. All right. It's just the way it's not what you think of 50, 60, 70 years ago, higher education. And a lot of people don't feel like those institutions actually give a darn about our values and what we value. And they're bemoaning the defunding of higher education. Okay. I'm segueing into this question. Where do you see higher education going? Because unless they start thinking the way you are, I think they're going to become more and more irrelevant. I really do. I love your thoughts on higher education in general.
Yeah, no, I think that, look, if you don't have Christ as your lodestar, you're going to make more and more mistakes. So I think what we're going to ultimately find is a couple of things. One is that that the trades side of things are going to become more and more exclusively important. We've already seen this trend with the STEM movement and the disregard for the liberal arts. But of course, then the ideological camp is going to preserve these institutions for the sake of the ideology itself and what that provides to the social order, obviously corrupting it from our Catholic vantage. But here's the other thing, and that I think perhaps a little bit more interesting, is that, look, every economic bubble ultimately bursts. And what does the government do, or what has the government been doing to fix those bursts, is throwing a ton of money at it, right? That is the Keynesian solution to this very natural business model progression of the ebbs and flows. What is done in higher education? Well, precisely a perfect Keynesian cycle where the government is throwing more money at it every single year, so the bubble ever grows without ever the threat of bursting. What is Donald Trump now doing? He's threatening to stop that Keynesian system, to stop putting money to ensure that the bubble grows ever larger. And what will inevitably happen almost immediately is a ginormous burst. That's what's coming. It's just hard and fast economics. The question is whether or not that will actually get done, or whether or not there will be the ever perennial concern of don't take too many radical changes, or else the market and the country cannot handle too many of these changes too quickly. Government is the government. They'll probably placate to the elites and not allowing business cycles to actually develop in the way that they should, and I include higher education within that.
Well, that's why we're just so grateful. And any parents out there who have college-age children now or in the next few years, please look into the College of St. Joseph. The worker, Jacob Imam, is the founder. And real quick, Jacob, 30 seconds. Are there other schools that are taking your model and trying to do the same thing?
You know what? No models of higher education or of a full bachelor's degree. You do find that there are some Catholic trade schools that are now incorporating Catholic formation and some intellectual formation. But that's more of continued catechesis than it is the more subtle, dynamic, and difficult theological queries that the church has worked out through her history. And so an extremely different model ultimately, and a very different student that goes there.
Well, let's hope that others pick up your model. Jacob, where's the website where people could go do a little research, perhaps even donate to the school?
collegeofstjoseph.com. We'd love to see you there. Yes, hit that donate tab. We'd be so grateful if you supported our mission, and come out and visit us. I'd love to shake your hand.
Absolutely. Maybe Joe and I will come out and visit one of these
You better.
days. We'll
One
come
of
and
these
shake your
days. You
hand.
guys keep saying it, but come on.
I know. It's that work thing.
Yeah.
Jacob Imam, thanks for coming on the show, brother. We are very proud to call you our friend, and we're so grateful when you come on and we discuss these things. And I'm sure we're going to be going into the breach again with you very, very soon. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much.
I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you out there for joining us at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Share our videos, share these conversations. They're important conversations. Let's get out to a wider audience. Thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.